It was discovered at that time Terry Bollea, also known as Hulk Hogan, was experiencing a serious medical-related...
A quick note before we begin. This video corrects a claim in its own title. There was no FBI investigation into Hulk Hogan's death. What actually unfolded in the months after his passing was, in its own way, just as revealing. A documented trail of surgery records, family testimony, court filings, and a Netflix documentary in which the people closest to him spoke on camera about regret. That's the story we're going to tell. Clearwater, Florida. 9:51 in the morning, July 24th, 2025. A 911 call comes in reporting cardiac arrest at a home on the city's waterfront. Fire and police units arrive within minutes. Inside, paramedics find Terry Bollea, the man the world knew as Hulk Hogan, unresponsive. They begin resuscitation on the scene and rush him to Morton Plant Hospital. At 11:17 a.m., he is pronounced dead. He was 71 years old. For a few hours, the news moved the way breaking celebrity news always does, fast, fragmented, and full of assumption. Within a day, tributes poured in from WWE, from fellow wrestlers, from 3 generations of fans who had grown up watching him tear his shirt open in arenas around the world. But behind the public mourning, a quieter and more precise process was already underway, a medical examiner's review that would take about a week to conclude, and a family reckoning that would take considerably longer. The official finding came from the District 6 Medical Examiner's Office in Pinellas County, which investigates deaths across that part of Florida. The cause of death was listed as acute myocardial infarction, a heart attack, and the manner of death was ruled natural. A cremation approval summary report, later obtained by Today.com and other outlets, was signed by Associate Medical Examiner Wayne Kurz. The report also disclosed something the public hadn't known. Hogan had been living with chronic lymphocytic leukemia, a slow-developing blood and bone marrow cancer, alongside a long-documented history of atrial fibrillation, an irregular heart rhythm that significantly raises the risk of sudden cardiac events. None of this had been public knowledge before his death. To understand why that diagnosis mattered so much, you have to understand what Hogan's body had already been through. In September 2024, on Logan Paul's podcast Impulsive, Hogan had described his own medical history in blunt, almost startled terms: 25 surgeries in 10 years. 10 of them on his back alone. Both knees replaced. Both hips replaced. Shoulder work on top of that. He talked about wrestling in rings from the 1970s that Andre the Giant himself had warned him about. Boards sticking up through the mat. Boxing rings never designed for the physical toll professional wrestling put on a body. It was, by his own account, a lifetime of accumulated damage, managed one operation at a time. The most recent of those operations happened just 2 months before he died. In mid-May 2025, TMZ Sports reported that Hogan had undergone what a representative for the wrestler downplayed as a little fusion procedure on his neck, medically, a cervical fusion, intended to relieve pressure that had been causing him pain. The recovery, his team said publicly, was fast. He was reportedly back to normal activity within a day, and by May 25th he was photographed in good spirits alongside Florida Governor Ron DeSantis at Hogan's hangout in Clearwater Beach, holding a drink and smiling for the cameras, seemingly proof that the surgery had gone exactly as planned. But less than a month later, in June 2025, a different narrative started to spread, this one considerably darker. Radio host Todd Clem, known publicly as Bubba the Love Sponge, told his audience that Hogan was hospitalized and that the situation was, in his words, not good, even suggesting family members had been summoned to say their goodbyes. It was an alarming claim, and it spread quickly through wrestling media and entertainment outlets. Hogan's representatives pushed back almost immediately, telling TMZ that he had been hospitalized for ongoing neck and back issues, nothing new, nothing catastrophic, and was, they insisted, by no means on his deathbed. His team told other outlets there were no reasons to panic. At the time, most observers took that reassurance at face value. Hogan had weathered dozens of surgeries before. Why would this one be different? 5 weeks later, he was gone. What makes this story more than just another celebrity health scare is what came afterward, specifically, what his own family began to say once the shock had settled. In 2026, Netflix released a docuseries titled Hulk Hogan, Real American, built around interviews with the people who knew him best: his first wife, Linda Claridge, his son, Nick Hogan, and his widow at the time of his death, Melanie Sky Daly. In one of the series' most striking moments, Sky, visibly emotional, said plainly that she wished he had never had the neck surgery. It's a small sentence, But it carries enormous weight. Not a legal accusation, not a diagnosis, just the raw regret of someone who watched a man she loved never fully return to himself after a procedure that was supposed to make him feel better. That regret wasn't only expressed on camera. According to reporting from TMZ, Sky Daily had also indicated plans to pursue a medical malpractice claim connected to the May surgery, alleging it had not been performed properly. Court filings related to Hogan's estate later listed an unspecified value tied to a potential medical malpractice lawsuit among the assets under consideration, a detail confirming that, at minimum, the family was formally exploring the possibility that the procedure played some role in his decline. No court has ruled on any such claim, and no findings have been made public establishing a direct medical link between the surgery and his cardiac arrest. But the question the family was asking, quietly and through legal channels rather than headlines, was this: did an operation meant to ease his pain instead leave him more fragile than anyone around him understood? Behind the medical timeline sat a family story that had its own long history of complication. Hogan's first marriage, to Linda Claridge, began in 1983 and lasted 24 years, producing 2 children, Brooke and Nick. For a time, that family was presented to the public as something close to wholesome. The 2005 reality series Hogan Knows Best turned their household into television, casting Hogan as a devoted, if larger-than-life father. The reality proved far messier. In 2007, allegations of infidelity surfaced, the marriage collapsed, and the divorce played out publicly and bitterly. Hogan later spoke candidly about the depression that followed, describing a period in which he struggled seriously with his mental health. He remarried in 2010, to Jennifer McDaniel, in a quieter ceremony that ended, just as quietly, in 2021. His third marriage, to yoga instructor Sky Daily, came in 2023. Through all of it, his relationship with his daughter Brooke grew more distant. The strain dated back years, to the fallout from the 2007 divorce, and to a widely publicized leaked recording that further damaged the family's public standing. By the time Hogan died, Brooke and her father had reportedly been estranged for roughly 2 years. She did not attend his funeral. In an Instagram post published shortly afterward, she explained her absence in her own words, saying her father had never wanted a funeral in the first place and that she had chosen to honor him privately rather than publicly. That estrangement became formally visible when the details of Hogan's estate were filed in court in September 2025. According to documents obtained by Us Weekly and TMZ, Hogan's will, originally executed in 2016 and amended several times through 2023, named his son Nick as the sole beneficiary. Melanie Sky Daly was listed as his surviving spouse. Brooke was not named at all. The filings detailed an estate of roughly $5 million, about $799,000 in personal and intellectual property, $200,000 in cryptocurrency, and by far the largest single asset, his right of publicity, his name, image, and likeness, valued at $4 million. Notably, his real estate, including 2 Clearwater beach properties reportedly worth a combined $11 million, wasn't listed in those filings at all. The exclusion of Brooke might look, on its surface, like a final and painful rupture. But reporting from multiple outlets, including Us Weekly, offered a different explanation, sourced to people close to the family. Brooke herself had asked to be removed from the will back in 2023, reportedly because she didn't want to be entangled in any legal disputes over her father's estate after his death, and didn't trust the people around him. If accurate, that reframes the story, not as a father cutting out his daughter, but as a daughter, already wary of the chaos that so often follows a public figure's death, choosing to step outside of it entirely. So what actually happened inside that Clearwater home isn't a mystery in the conspiratorial sense. There was no secret room, no disabled security system, no cryptic phone call traced through foreign servers. What there was, instead, was a 71-year-old man whose body carried the accumulated cost of nearly 5 decades in a brutal profession, a body already compromised by leukemia and an irregular heartbeat, that underwent a significant neck surgery just weeks before his death, and whose family, in hindsight, wondered aloud whether the procedure had cost him more than anyone realized at the time. What lingers isn't a cover-up. It's something more human than that, a legend who spent his public life selling invincibility, and a private one negotiating, quietly and imperfectly, with a body that had simply run out of runway. His WrestleMania 3 body slam of Andre the Giant remains one of the most replayed images in the history of the sport. Performers who came after him, Dwayne Johnson, John Cena, and so many others, have said openly that the stage he built made their own careers possible. That legacy isn't in question. What his family is still working through, in courtrooms and in documentary interviews, is something smaller and sadder, whether one more surgery, meant to give him a little more comfort, quietly took something from him instead. That's not a scandal. It's just grief, looking for an answer it may never fully find.